also be dropped down just to keep everything. Not only that, you didn't really want you know, all the instrument light leading through for the rest of the cockpit, so you just drop that down to keep, you know, the light, keep it separate.
So many dials.
Facing forward, so any oncoming aircraft will be able to see, you know, see the cockpit at night. One time.
Right. There's just so many dials and gauges and switches, and our brains must be multitasking like absolute nutters.
Well, did you notice that there's a few sets of dials that are actually slanted?
Yeah, those ones, yeah.
Yep. And on the, right in the middle, on the engine part, engine management, the dials are actually off at an angle, and that was to allow the pipe, because when the needles should all be vertical.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to try and read an instrument; they could just visually say, "Are all the needles vertical?"
Okay.
So they offset the instruments to allow that. So it's a quick flash across the the instrumentation, and they could tell if there was anything abnormal. They could tell immediately. They didn't have to read to say, is that reading, you know, 35,000 pounds or whatever, or thrust or whatever. They could just, you know, whatever the pressure. Yeah. They could just read by visual.
How many engines did it need to fly? Could it fly on two? Or?
It could fly on two. Technically, I think it could actually fly on one. Now Len has got, who's one of the other guides, he's got all the, because he used to work on these in the RAF, but he's got the figures. These could actually glide from 40,000 feet to, they could glide, you know, quite a few miles because of the wing area. So the yeah, you fly like a paper plane, I suppose. Eventually comes down.
Yeah, I guess so.
But the problem, one of the problems that they had with this aircraft were the close proximity of the engines one to the other. So if one engine went, was hit or whatever, invariably it would take out its partner. Which was what happened to 558, the one that flies in 2012. They had a catastrophic failure in one of the engines, and the debris was shot. The engine casing is designed that everything goes backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
So everything would be shot out the aircraft at the back or out the front, and not ripping through the fuselage, tearing the plane in half.
Yeah.
So the engine casing, the housing, did its job, but it shot all the debris forward, which was then immediately sucked into the next engine. So it takes about 1 3/4. I think Barry Masefield, he said it was about 1 3/4 seconds later they lost the second engine. That's one of the reasons why the CAA grounded this aircraft. They stipulate that this aircraft needs 10,000 feet of runway, but no matter what the aircraft is, under civil aviation rules, you've got to be able to accelerate to take off power, and then if you need to abort, you've got to have sufficient runway to be able to stop afterwards, which is what they demonstrated, because they were in their full takeoff run, and it was only until they got to sort of full power and takeoff hurtling down the runway that the items were dislodged and destroyed the engine. So they were still able to brake and stop in that time. There was no way you'd be able to do it here. You'd be right across into Calcott House, and the National Trust wouldn't be very pleased.
So this plane is here forever then, really?
Yes, unless they get the approvals for all the housing development, and in which case we don't know what's going to happen to this.
What, they want to build all around here?
They want to build this whole airfield. We've got the little brochures down there called Wellesbourne Matters.
Right.
The proposal last year was that the whole site be put up for the development of 1,600 houses for the council's strategic development plan. The council rejected it, but they're still probably trying to go private. It's owned by one family. There's 25 members of the family.
That own this land?
All this land and the farm next door as well. So they wanted to sell the whole lot for a big development. They've scaled down the development to 1,500 houses, but if they get the approval, planning permission to go privately, they would still get it done privately. So all this would go, the airfield, the market.
So this would have to be relocated somewhere? No?
You can't relocate it.
You can't?
No. The last one that they had to relocate cost them £500,000, and you couldn't move it again afterwards, because you have to cut through the main wing spars, etc. to actually
But I mean, what would happen? Would it
They
just...
just get broken up for scrap, probably.
Oh my god.
You might get the cockpit section getting cut off for a museum or something like that. You
It's
might have a
terrible.
road named Vulcan Drive or something like that.
So is there a big campaign going then?
Yeah,
There
there
is.
is.
Is it going well? Is it got...
I don't know. Charles is probably the best one to, the director is probably the best one to.
It's terrible.
But if you're interested, we have got where you're watching the video.
Yeah.
On the right, as you're going on the right, there's a plan of what the proposal is, and also if you wanted to sign up to Wellesbourne Matters, it's a sort of they're trying to get a petition going to actually keep it, because there's only 60 businesses that operate off this airfield.
Yeah.
Heliair have got their UK headquarters here.
It's not like there isn't other land available,
No,
really,
exactly.
is there?
Yeah.
But the problem is, because it's privately owned, it's not. The council have already rejected it as part of their strategic building plans for the next 30 odd years. So they don't need the land for development because they've got other sites in mind. But they've now suddenly seen that they could all become millionaires. So if they get the go ahead, for the planning permission, but there's a lot of people because it would double the size of Wellesbourne. And there are a lot of people saying, well, we can't cope with the infrastructure.
Road
the infrastructure is
infrastructure,
not able to cope even now with the traffic that comes in. So if you're doubling the size of it, there's just no way that they can survive.
They don't seem to think about things like that, though, do they? They don't think about the roads and the access.
Well, they would do if they've actually got to get the planning permission.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Definitely.
So,
Oh dear.
but that's some of the things that are going on. But apart from that, this is probably the best kept Vulcan there is left in the world.
Fantastic.
558 doesn't have any of this instrumentation there. It's just all a plywood panel painted black.
Okay.
Because that's one of the other things. CAA rules stipulate for civil aviation, civil aircraft. If you have an instrument which is on the aircraft, it has to be serviceable.
Oh.
So 558 actually have to remove nearly 10 tons of equipment
Oh my god.
to be able to get the certificate to fly. They've got it all stored. It's not been destroyed or anything like that, but it's just not in the aircraft. And then they had to replace it with concrete ballast to actually be able to keep the thing balanced.
There's one of these at Norwich Airport, although I think you can get inside it, but I don't think it's got anything inside it either.
One of the for the first, I don't know how many years, 10, 15 years, when the gentleman who bought it abandoned it, he bought another one, which is XL426, which is based at Southend. Again, hoping to put it onto the display circuit and fly around the air shows. But the CA also grounded that one. So he kind of lost all his money and spent all his money on this. But for many years it was actually abandoned here, and it wasn't. I think it was 96, 97. MAPS was formed, a group of volunteers. Many of the original staff then moved on to Delta Aviation, based at Kemble, because that's where they can fix aircraft and large. You can get 747s in there, so there's more opportunity of getting a serviceable aircraft back in the air. Whereas this has no chance whatsoever. But have you ever seen Thunderbirds?
No, I don't think I
Puppets?
have.
Oh,
the
yeah,
puppets, yes,
yeah.
Thunderbirds. I'll go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who hasn't?
The design of the Vulcan was governed by the size of the tunnel of getting from one site of the factory to the other. At Woodford they have a tunnel, and they couldn't make it any bigger because there's only 5 centimetres of gap either side of this aircraft as it goes through the tunnel, and they used to have to fold down all the lampposts to be able to get it through. So the main fuselage section we built on one side, it would be then transported on one of these special low loaders to have the wings put onto the other site, and then the spars and everything all bolted up together, and then that's where the runway was. So they couldn't make it any bigger because of the tunnel.
Goodness.
So this is probably the original Thunderbirds. Thunderbirds 2.
FAB.
FAB, yeah.